Hey, Parker, you want to hear a joke?
I don't know that I do, actually.
Oh, come on. It's so good.
Okay, what is it?
All right. You ready? So the sturgeon says to the nurse, "There's so many patients. Who do I fix first?" And then the nurse says, "Ah, a talking fish."
Okay. I didn't think it was going to be funny, but that was pretty good.
I know, right? In case you forgot, here's how this works. Parker and I will rate Shovelnose Sturgeon on a scale of 1 to 10 in a variety of categories. We'll then average our scores to get their wild rating.
First up, mobility. Mobility. It's how they move. I'm going to start Shovelnose Sturgeon off with a 3.
Oh, that's pretty low.
It is pretty low. And unfortunately, speed is not their strength. Strength might be their strength, but speed is not their strength. They are pretty slow. They live mostly in like flowing rivers. And when they're swimming against the current, it's up to 2 miles an hour.
So that's like walking really slowly. Like I'm a fast walker. So when I get caught behind someone like at a grocery store or just, you know, when you're in line and you get caught behind someone that's walking really slow, that's probably like what it feels like to be a sturgeon.
Well, it's probably what it feels like to be behind a sturgeon. Yeah.
Oh, yep. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's probably like someone in front of you intentionally walking slow just to make you mad.
Yeah, I'm with you giving them a 3. That would drive me nuts.
But when they can get to what's called the boundary layer flow, which is this cool part of the river that's up against either the substrate or the bank, basically the water slows down a little bit because it's contacting, whether that's rocks or dirt or whatever, there's like friction. And the water's actually slower in those areas. And in those areas, they can go up to 4 miles an hour.
All right, so I could be happy swimming behind a sturgeon in the boundary layer. That's it.
Yeah, probably. Their top speed, though, is 4. And so they're sticking with my 3 for that. What did you give them?
So I gave them a 6. They might be slow, but as they say, slow and steady can win a race. So some sturgeon have been documented traveling up to 120 miles.
That's crazy. That must take them forever.
Yeah, I mean, if you do the math, if they're going about, 2 to 4 miles an hour, that could be about 60 hours or so if they swam in a straight line.
And all at once. They're probably not swimming 60 hours straight trying to get somewhere.
No, definitely not. They're probably, eating, resting, maybe going the wrong way for a little while.
Yeah.
It might take a couple months. I don't know.
Do they all swim that far?
Unfortunately, no. There's a lot of barriers like dams or other things that people can build that could really prevent their travel.
So I guess what are the negatives if they can't get past those dams?
That's a great question. And there's a really cool story about this. So before 1900, shovelnose sturgeon used to be found in rivers across northeast Wyoming, but then development caused them to disappear from all of those areas except for the Powder River. After almost 100 years, though, the Game and Fish Department reintroduced them to the Bighorn River, so now you can still find them in the Bighorn and Powder Rivers today.
Where did they get the sturgeon to reintroduce in the Bighorn River?
That's a really good question. They actually came from a place called a fish hatchery where they raised them from eggs, and then once the department felt like the fish were big enough to release safely into the river, they let them go there, and they're surviving pretty well.
That's awesome.
Next up, we'll slowly swim over to size. Size. It's how big and how small, how short, or how tall. I gave them a 3. And that's because they're pretty small for a sturgeon. They're only 28 inches, which is about a little more than 2 feet, and up to 5 pounds.
That seems like a pretty big fish. What do you mean they're small?
Okay. It is pretty big for, a fish that you would catch. But compared to other sturgeon, it's actually not that big at all.
How big are these other sturgeon?
So white sturgeon are the largest fish in North America.
Oh.
They can grow up to 20 feet long. So compared to 20 feet, barely 2, not that big.
Sorry. Did you say 20 feet?
Yeah, as in 20.
And this is a freshwater fish?
It is. They're like a modern day dinosaur.
Just swimming around rivers.
Yeah. And I will say, that some of the record one are 20 feet. 10 to 12 feet is kind of normal for these white sturgeon. But again, 10 to 12 feet, normal.
Yeah, little guys, 10 to 12ers.
Huge. So that's why I gave the Shovelnose Sturgeon a 3. It's comparative. What'd you give them?
I gave them an 8, and I'm using kind of a different size metric. I'm going to talk about their age. They can be incredibly old for a fish.
I was going to say 8. That is quite a high number considering I just talked about how small they are.
Sure, but there are other ways to measure size, right? The size of their lifespan.
Yeah, that's really creative. I like it.
Yeah, and they have a large lifespan.
How old do they get?
They can survive up to 70 years.
Oh my gosh, that is so old.
It really is.
So how does that compare to other fish?
So if you remember from our Yellowstone cutthroat trout episode, the longest they live is 16 years.
Oh, so compared to 70,
It's a 54-year difference. 54 years would be an old fish.
That is significant.
So imagine with me, some shovelnose sturgeon in Wyoming is turning 70 today. That means they hatched from an egg in 1955.
Wow. Yeah, that is a long time. I think that 8 is definitely worth it.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. Let's swirl, or is it whirl, on over to accessories. Accessories are special characteristics that our animal has. I'm going to give shovelnose sturgeon an 8.
An 8 again?
An 8 again. Sticking with it. This 8 is for their barbels, though.
What are barbels?
Barbels are those little whiskers. It's like catfish have them too.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, do you know what barbels are for?
Nope.
So barbels are for like sensing prey on the bottom of the riverbed.
So like what exactly are they sensing here?
So it's motion. They're sensing like movements.
In the water?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they use those barbels because, a lot of these rivers are pretty murky at the bottom, and so there's not great visibility. And so they use those to kind of find what they need to eat.
So like if something's wiggling, it'll move the water a little bit, and then they feel it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
What'd you give them?
That's pretty cool. I gave them a 7, so also pretty high.
Okay.
That's because they lay between, get ready for this, 10,000 to 50,000 eggs.
That's a crazy range.
It is a very huge range, but even at the low end, 10,000 eggs.
Yes, I'm trying to visualize. I'm thinking of like our mud snails podcast where we talked about how small mud snails are. 10,000 eggs has to take up a giant amount of area.
Yeah, and so I could see why they lay so many though, right? Mm-hmm. Because the females, they don't spawn, so they don't reproduce until they're 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they wait quite a while, and then they also don't spawn or reproduce every year. So when they do, they just go big,
Yeah, I get that. So you're taking the one like 50,000 egg shot.
Yeah, and hoping that a lot of those babies survive. Mm-hmm. So another fun fact about their eggs is they are used for caviar.
Huh. You ever had caviar?
I haven't. I've never been able to just, get there.
Yeah, I wonder what it tastes like.
I think it would be a weird texture.
Yeah.
But they can come from sturgeon eggs. So let's splash on over to style. Style, it's how attractive they are. Do they have fun patterns, special colorations? I gave Shovelnose Sturgeon a 9.
Whew, that's high.
Yeah, because they do have really cool coloration. So they have one of the coolest camouflage techniques. You know what camouflage is, right?
I do.
So their type of camouflage they have is called counter shading.
Counter shading. So they hide under counters.
That would be hilarious. I wish. No, this is way better than that. This means that they're actually darker on the top half of their body and then lighter on the bottom half.
How does that benefit them at all?
I know. At first, it sounds kind of boring, but get this. So the darker top half means that if anything looks down at it, it blends in with like the deeper, darker bottom of the water. And then if anything's underneath it and they look up, the water surface where the sun shines on it is really, really bright. So if they're like really light and white, then it blends in with that. So no matter what direction you look at them from, they're hidden.
So it's like a double camouflage almost.
Exactly.
That's sweet.
It's super sweet. And they use this to their advantage to avoid being seen by predators, like things that want to eat them, and prey, the things that they want to eat.
I didn't even think about hiding from prey. So like as they're swimming over stuff, they can't even see you coming. That's awesome.
They just come out of nowhere like a ghost. I love it. What did you give them?
I gave them a 6. And I gave them a 6 for where they get their name. They're shovel nose.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Tell me more about that.
So it's kind of funny looking. I wouldn't say it looks like a shovel, but obviously someone thought it looked like a shovel. It's kind of like a long, flat triangle that just curves up a little bit at the end. And they use that to disturb the bottom of rivers where they live. And I don't know if you've ever looked for macroinvertebrates. We've talked about macroinvertebrates before. They're like those little bugs that live in rivers. But a lot of times when you look for macroinvertebrates, you just like kick rocks around. And essentially they use their shovel nose to like kick rocks around. And then these little bugs like fall off the rocks.
And then they slurp them right up.
And then they slurp them right up, yeah.
Maybe they didn't name them shovel nose because their nose looked like a shovel. Maybe it's just because they use it like a shovel.
That makes so much more sense. I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Maybe.
Let's dig ourselves over to Intimidation Factor. Intimidation Factor is how scary is this animal to other animals or to us. Shovelnose Sturgeon are going to get an 8 for Intimidation Factor.
That's pretty intimidating.
Yeah, and maybe intimidation is the wrong word, but they're kind of like fish tanks. And
like
I don't mean
what you put fish into?
No. Sorry, I used the wrong words here. Not like what you put fish into, like the military tanks. Like they're very armored.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. So they have 5 rows of these things called scoots to defend from predators. And scoots are kind of like scales, but they're just like thicker and bigger, like big old pieces of armor. And so it's really hard for predators to like get into the soft, meaty parts of the sturgeon. And so, with the counter shading that you talked about, they're kind of like invincible, invisible fish swimming through our rivers, which is super cool.
Yeah, that is pretty. I would say that's pretty intimidating for sure.
Yeah. What'd you give them?
I gave them a 5, and it has to do with their mouth. If you've never seen what a shovelnose sturgeon's mouth looks like, just Google it. It's so creepy looking.
Can we pull a picture out?
It's kind of like a vacuum with gums, but no teeth, underneath that long snout with the barbels that Parker talked about.
Okay, that's gross looking.
Yeah. So the reason I gave it a 5 is because they look really, really intimidating and weird. But I only gave it a 5 because they don't actually have teeth, so they can't really bite anything. They just kind of like vacuum up food. They just suck it up. So it's basically not as scary as it looks.
So it's like an invisible vacuum tank.
Yeah.
Like an invisible Roomba on the bottom of all of our rivers.
That's pretty intense. Yeah.
I like that a bunch.
All right. Let's scoot on over to Razzle
I see
Dazzle.
what you did there.
I gave them a 7. And that is because if there was a lookalike contest with pallid sturgeon, shovelnose sturgeon would win.
I'm confused. You just said Razzle Dazzle are unique features that no other animal may have. And so their unique feature is that they look just like another sturgeon?
Listen, they look so much like this other fish that they are actually listed as threatened, even though their populations are doing just fine. But that pallid sturgeon, the fish that the shovelnose sturgeon looks so much like, they are actually endangered. So just in case people mix them up, where both of those species exist, they just went ahead and gave the shovelnose sturgeon some special protections too, because of how similar they look.
Okay, so if I was to catch a shovelnose sturgeon where they coexist, which is not Wyoming, correct?
No.
So somewhere else. If I was to catch one, I would have to treat it like it was a pallid sturgeon just because I can't be sure.
Yeah, that's how much they look alike.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's worthy of a razzle dazzle right there. What'd you give them?
So I gave them a 5, and I gave them a 5 because of their heterocircle tail.
And what is that?
Yes, it's a very long way of saying that the top part of their tail is longer than the bottom part. So I think of a fish tail. There's kind of like 2 bits on the back that sometimes make a V, sometimes they're flat, Are you following me?
Yeah.
So the top part of that tail is just longer than the bottom part of that tail.
So they're not even.
They're not even. They're asymmetrical, if you will.
Okay.
And the reason that this lives in Razzle Dazzle, because that feels very stylish, right?
Sure.
The reason it lives in Razzle Dazzle is because it also serves a function for mobility. And so you think of some of our more common game fish, our trouts, our perch, our bass, like those tails are the same size.
Yeah. And so what's the advantage there for them? Why aren't they the same?
So the same size ones, they are for speed. Those fish are all really fast. We've talked about sturgeon. Speed is not their strong suit.
No, they're not fast.
Not fast at all. But that heterocircle tail, which is that longer top, allows them to change directions faster, which is probably better on the riverbed floor for finding those macroinvertebrates they're looking for to eat.
Okay. So their razzle dazzle is that they can be really agile, even though they're slow.
Yeah, and it's like kind of a style, kind of mobility. It's a bunch of different things all wrapped into one, which we don't talk about a lot. There's not a lot of species that have, multiple categories in one feature.
Yeah, and I think if there was something that would sum it up, it would be razzle dazzle.
Yeah, for sure. Now that we've done all our categories, it's time for our wild rating. Our wild rating is the average number of points given for all of the other things we've talked about. Stephanie, can I get a drum roll, please?
All right. So the wild rating for the Shovelnose Sturgeon is 6.25.
That's all right.
Above average.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide how I feel about that.
I think it's pretty good. I mean, they're a really cool fish.
They are really cool fish. They're very slow. I feel like that hurt them. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I mean, 6.25 is pretty high. It's, again, above average. I'm happy with it.
Now that we've learned about Shovelnose Sturgeon, you may be interested in experiencing them in nature. There are a few options, but before you head out and do these activities, always keep your safety in mind. Especially because these are water-based creatures, we want to be very careful around the water. Make sure there's always a parent with you, and if you can't swim, make sure you have a life jacket on. Some of these rivers move pretty quick, so even if you can swim, it's always a good idea to wear those life jackets. Ashley, what are some ways we can get out and experience Shovelnose Sturgeon?
Well, like Parker was talking about, if you go look for them in the water, that's great. But the best way to see fish is by catching them, right? And summer is a great time to get outside and go fishing. So I would recommend, if you want, you can check out the Wyoming Game and Fish website or see the link in our bio to find out about all of the really cool kids fishing challenges that you can tackle while you're out there.
Wait, you mentioned earlier that in some places they're threatened. Is Wyoming one of those places?
Luckily, you don't have to worry about that. They're classified as a game fish here, and we don't have pallid sturgeon. So if you're out fishing, you don't have to worry about mixing them up. You should always check the fishing regs before you go fishing, though, just to make sure you know the rules.
I'm glad we got to do a fish again. It feels like it's been a while since we did a fish.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm already looking forward to the next episode. Are you?